Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media, and Thomas is going to create another firestorm, aren't you, dear?
Well, I don't mean to, but if you're listening here and you don't want to hear the truth, then don't listen here.
Yeah, you need to unsubscribe.
The truth may hurt.
Because we're going to keep telling it all the way.
The truth I'm about to tell you is another red pill, and I'm sorry, but that's what it's going to take. I've said these things gently before. I need to say them more directly now. Nothing I'm going to say now, except for a couple details, have I not said before, except I'll say it in a different way. But there is an attempt to create an Armageddon by multiple factions. 3 of them are supposedly religious, and then there's also the countries involved, and there's oil involved. And so you've heard me say before, if you really want to look at the Syrian war causes, you'd have to go, there are 7 causes, and here are the 7 causes. Dick Cheney, Rupert Murdoch, James Woosley, Larry Summers, Bill Richardson, Michael Steinhardt, and last but not least, who doesn't need an introduction, Jacob Rothschild. Now, why do I say that? Because they sit on the board of Genie Oil. Genie Oil is in the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights has been consistently encroached upon and now completely taken over by Israel. And it is in the Golan Heights that Genie Oil found the largest oil deposits that Israel has on land. So who moves in? Of course, the second the money starts to flow, then the evil ones flow right into it because they got to get their piece of the pie. It's like the Clinton foundations, 25 at least that I know of, and probably many more I don't, gets a piece of the pie. Anytime money flows, which oil is money, people go and they basically tax it. So Israel attacks Syria, takes the Golan Heights. That's what happened. You want to talk about the war in Syria? Part of the war in Syria is Israel attacked Syria. This has been going on for many years. No one seems to notice. And now they have the exact spots, and they're beginning to drill, Genie Oil is. And of course, those people I just mentioned are the culprits who are the usual suspects anytime big money goes down. And basically, it's like a tax. It's like putting a Hunter Biden on the largest liquid gas liquid gas company in a board in Ukraine. So it's like that's the tax. Joe Biden told him he's going to become president. You got to put my son on the board, paid position. Then he goes to China, get him on the board. So this is what this is. Oil starts to flow in that area, and it's going to lead to what they think is a game of political manipulation that looks like Armageddon, and then everybody is just so used to it. And so the caricature of the whole thing, Syria is the war of Armageddon, war of Armageddon. Folks, that's real. I'm going to explain why that's real in a minute. We've explained it before. But when it comes down to it, part of it is about oil. Now let me explain the second part. That was the oil on land. And then, of course, there's 3 pipelines we've described to you before, even given you the pipelines, and it's about the pipelines in Syria, and then who gets the oil, and of course, even the oil coming through those pipelines is taken by Israel. And Israel has now claimed the liquid gas in the Mediterranean, and they've built offshore platforms, and they're drilling as fast as they can. Who has rights to that oil? First off, are the geological records true, or is it that the oil fields were drawn so that Israel would have rights to oil fields it doesn't really deserve? But last I checked, I think they had 3 operative and 2 going, and a couple others in the oil liquid gas area near Cyprus and Greece. And so they're fighting about that one too. So they have to destabilize Syria. They have to destabilize Lebanon because they also have rights to that oil. So whoever gets to it first gets it. These are international rights of, geological and mineral rights. And it's whoever gets to it first. So Israel has to keep disrupting Syria so they don't go out and get that oil. They fight over the oil that's coming out of Iraq and out of their own fields. And Jordan, poor Jordan, has an intact pipeline, but they haven't gotten involved because they know it will get blown up and an oil war will start. And so if you look at the pipelines, and now you look at even Turkey and the pipeline coming out of Iraq through Kurdistan, what used to be Kurdistan. So what does Turkey want? They want full rights to that. They want to stop the Kurds having any right to put a tax on it coming through their land, or even Iraq. So coming out of Iran, going into France. They now cut that off. That's why Russia has moved into Iran and is, best buddies with Iran right now. So Iran has the money given by Obama, who was basically there to create chaos in the Muslim world so that the really mean, nasty Zionists, who are not the people in Israel. These are not Jews. These are Zionists. Just like Joe Biden said, I'm a Zionist. What are they talking about? I'm a Zionist. Okay, he's not Jewish, but he says he's a Zionist. Correct. Huge difference. Plus, we have to go into different types of Zionism. We'd have to go into we've done this a few times where we do not generalize anything. If you do, you just add to the problem. We have to be very specific. The people right now trying to put forth the Greater Israel Project is Benjamin Netanyahu. Obama spent over $700,000 to try to disrupt his election so he wouldn't get reelected because he's so corrupt. But why is he corrupt? Because the oil's flowing. He has to be corrupt. He has to distract. As soon as the Syrian peace agreements were reached, ceasefires, not peace agreements, the ceasefire agreements were reached, what did Israel do? Oh, we see Hezbollah, long trains of reinforcement and supplies coming in, going all the way from Iran through Iraq into Syria, into Lebanon. So we just bombed the snot out of it. And then what did they do? They took down one of their fighter planes. Well, they were bombing food supplies. Those weren't weapons. That's the reason they didn't show any weapons being blown up. That lovely drone that supposedly came into the area the other day, which caused them to unleash fire and fury from the sky down upon supposed their enemy positions. That's how they got Golan Heights to begin with. Oh, and it's true. Oh, there are enemies over there and they're shooting rockets at us or shooting at us, so we are just going to smash them, take their area, and anywhere someone is attacking us from, we're going to take it, we're going to encroach, we're going to put in people living there, we're going to take over the land, and we're not leaving. That's happened in all around Israel, Golan Heights, but in Palestine, the incursions into Palestine, so on and so forth. That's what the whole argument is about between the Palestinians and the Israelis. But remember, you can't have peace. I'm going to explain what Trump did, because it's pure genius. But first I have to lay the groundwork so you understand this. After World War I, the entire Middle East was cut up into pieces. The Sykes-Picot, P-I-C-O-T, agreement was reached. It was secret. And that was shortly after that is when they said, well, we're going to give all the Jews a place to live. And that's going to be Palestine. Well, those two things combined caused the Middle East to be carved up. And then later, where the oil was, then, of course, we came in, we fleeced them. We fleeced Iraq, we fleeced Iran, we fleeced every country we could. Britain, France, Germany, America. We just took all the oil. America was the worst. We set up the petrodollar and we became the world currency because we controlled the flow of oil and the price of oil. So we paid 10, 100 times what it was worth, so that those countries could become so rich afterwards. Why? Because for a very long time, we ripped them off for the oil. They got next to nothing. And then we'd sell them the equipment. And by the way, Dick Cheney, I mentioned, Genie Oil. How many indictments, federal indictments, did he have against him for breaking the sanctions against Iran to sell, through Halliburton, equipment that they needed to continue their oil? I believe it was 5. Someone can look that up, correct me. But anyway, there were numerous charges against him when he was asked to find a vice presidential candidate because he's so powerful. And what did he suggest? Himself, while he was under indictment. What happened to those indictments? Nothing. So, sanctions in Iran, does this sound familiar? He breaks the sanctions for oil. He was the representative of Halliburton. Halliburton, huge oil, right? They're the geologists. They go in, they find it first, and then that's when the war starts. So when Genie Oil found the oil in the Golan Heights, well, Genie Oil is drilling. They found it long before. So when the oil was found in the Golan Heights, of course Israel's going to take it. They don't have good oil fields, so they are taking that one. And now I believe, last I checked, they were 1 second away from drilling. They're probably drilling by now. So thank you, Mr. Rothschild, for coming out to demonstrate to us your wickedness. Thank you, Dick Cheney, for continuing your wickedness. James Woolsey, ex-director of the FBI. Oh, yeah, you're a straight guy, aren't you?
I bet you he's SES on top of it.
Oh, without a doubt.
If we go through that list.
Larry Summers. SES.
Larry Summers, you see his name all over this IBM Eclipse Foundation group that stole the technology that Leader Technologies had developed that is now the reason that social media is so large. So these are crooks.
Bill Richardson, previous governor of New Mexico, UN representative, and basically a person who knows how to destabilize the world through the UN. Very useful.
And Rupert Murdoch. I mean, he's on the list.
Well, they have to have yellow journalism.
Yes, they got to have their media coverage so that we, the people out here, don't know what's going on.
You who think we don't know what we're talking about, or we now might conflate us with Q Collective or anything else, nothing we are saying now we haven't said before. Have you heard anybody talking about the liquid gas fields that is really causing the wars in Syria, spreading into Lebanon, blaming it on Iran, who's trying to feed Hezbollah, who's basically the only social services going on in Lebanon? People would all be dying of having no food and water in Lebanon because of what has happened there. They have to keep it destabilized. People don't understand. We pointed this out when, what's the new young prince's name in Saudi Arabia? Anyway, the new prince in Saudi Arabia that Trump is working with. What is going on there? I'm going to explain the historical thing. It's going to get very weedy, but you need to understand the backdrop for this. When we split up all that area, we basically created wars. We didn't look at who was Shiite, who was Sunni, who was all the different religions there. We didn't really look at any borders drawn by what you might call nationalities or people who speak certain languages. We just made a mishmash of it so we could manipulate it and then parceled it up to the winners of World War I, and they fleeced them, and then to this very moment, they're only getting it back now. These oil fields are only coming to the possession of the people who own them now. They're fighting over the possession of the ones in Syria because Turkey wants that oil. If Turkey's border moved a little bit, they'd get those oil pipelines and some oil fields, wouldn't they? They'd get the other oil fields, the pipelines that come out of Syria, wouldn't they? They'd get the oil that comes out of Iraq that's being held up. So the oil coming out of Iraq is being held up during this whole war. Lots about oil. Now, did you hear anything about any of this, folks? No. That's what Rupert Murdoch does. He makes sure that Genie Oil and the liquid gas ripoff going on in the Mediterranean by Zionists, and these are people who are independent corporations who get contracts. This isn't the people that are being voted for by the Jews in Israel, okay? Now, two more things. What did Trump do? He said, we're going to put the capital, we're going to recognize and move our embassy and basically recognize that Israel exists. Israel's capital has always been Jerusalem. If we move our embassy there, we recognize it. And then that basically says, when you come to the peace table to discuss Israel and Palestine, it has to be a two-nation solution. Will that ever happen? No. That's why every one of these stupid attempted peace discussions can't ever go forward. Palestinians have sworn, many of them, to kill all Israelis. Some Israelis have sworn to kill all Palestinians. Do you really think you're going to sit down at a table until they first work through that little problem? So, what has always been happening is the Zionists, who are not Jewish, who helped create Israel for the Jews, who certainly did deserve to have a place. They were offered many places. They were offered, I believe, I would say the state, but I might be mistaken. They were offered an entire state in America, the Jews, at the same time that they were offered Palestine. But of course they want Jerusalem. This is where we're going to get into the big thing here in just a second. But Trump did that to do what? What he always does. When you do a deal, what do? You lowball them. Then what happens? They give you their bottom line. And then you start the negotiation on an attack. And through the attack, they reveal their weaknesses. I mean, this is basic. Any negotiator knows this. So he goes in and he says he's going to move it. During the time between he said he was going to move the capital, move the embassy and recognize the capital, essentially, of Israel as Jerusalem, what has happened? peace in Syria, ceasefires, I should say. Now, we can go into why Israel keeps bombing Syria and stirring things up, saying it's Hezbollah, feeding Hamas, feeding the Palestinian Authority, which then is sending missiles into Israel. All of that is true, but they need to break it down. The weapons come from Hamas. Look who gives Hamas the weapons. It isn't Hezbollah. Hezbollah is providing the services. I mean, they do. And Hezbollah, if necessary, yes, they're the best fighters that we had in Syria. Hezbollah, believe it or not. And so they're excellent fighters, but they're also providing humanitarian aid in Lebanon, because Lebanon is just a mess. And soon, there's already been bombing there. There's been continuous Israeli bombing of any area near it where they have someone shoot at them. Remember the new rule, not an eye for an eye. They've changed the rule. 2 eyes for an eye. You attack Israel, they attack you twice. You send 1 missile, they send 2 or more. You shoot from 3 places, they're blowing up those 3 places, and the other 3 places that they also believe, suspect, or know that their enemy exists. And if they push the enemy back far enough, and they had a line of the enemy there, they simply take over that territory for their own security. Now, all of this seems logical, doesn't it? Let me tell you what's really going on. First off, we're talking about political Zionism. We're not talking about Jews. And we're not just talking about Israel. We're talking about the Greater Israel Project, which is much, much bigger and includes many. It includes the Anglo-American Alliance. That's who started it. It includes the fact that the Anglo-American Alliance wants to destabilize the area for an expansion of the people who are on their side, which is Israel. Why? Because the people that the Anglo-American Alliance ripped off are kind of upset by the fact that you ripped them off for the oil, their land. You messed around with them in every way. I'm not going to get into that, but they basically stole everything, moved their wealth out of those areas, kept the people poor, and only kept the elite in those countries, very, very wealthy royalty, who poured their money into the crooked money in America, in Britain, and in Europe. That's what the young prince in Saudi Arabia did. He called all of that out. But at the same time, for the first time, maybe forever, I don't know, but for the first time, certainly in a long time, Saudi Arabian and Israeli space are open for air flight. In other words, fighters can now come into Saudi Arabia, go into Yemen, and defend Saudi Arabia. Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. These are Muslims and Jews working together? Not quite. It's Zionists and a faction of the Muslims who has turned totally away from Wahhabism and radical Muslim basically fascism, and they're now a dictator, a dictatorial totalitarianism. What's new? That's what they were before, but now Trump got them to get rid of the secretly funded radical Islamic terrorists in all countries. And so Israel, because of that, has united with Saudi Arabia. They're attacking the remains of ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Yemen. And that's why the Iranians are helping the Yemenis to attack Saudi Arabia, because if you attack Saudi Arabia now, you're attacking Israel. Israel's defending Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is giving money to Israel to get what they want. They want Syria back. Why do they want Syria back? For Damascus. They used to own it. Now they want it back. Now, that's the outer political thing with the oil and the politics and the corrupt Netanyahu. He's so hated by everybody that even Obama tried to take him out. But what does Trump do? Netanyahu's been called into the light. He's a troll. He's going to turn to stone. Make sure to break up the stone before dark comes, or they turn back into a troll. And how do you trick the trolls? They're clever, very clever, but they're not wise. So this is the wisdom I'm about to tell you. Consciousness is what's going to win the day. The Battle of Armageddon is predicted to be outside of a hill, a tell called Tel Megiddo, by insinuation through Muslims, specifically by Christians, and specifically by Jews. Now, Tel Megiddo, a number of battles have happened there. Some call it the Fields of Armageddon, but those fields exist in between Damascus and Tel Megiddo. So when you say a specific place, you can't say exactly this spot, but the point is that there's supposed to be a battlefield, and in that battlefield, there's supposed to be rivers of blood, and after that, then the Messiah, called the Muhammad al-Mahdi, or called the Mahdi, who the Shiites really, really, really believe in, is supposed to return. And the Sunnis believe in it. It isn't from the Quran, it's from the Hadith, but they both believe in it, okay? So the Muslim Messiah is about to come, and the Shiites believe he's already here. And the signs have come, I'll tell you that in a second. But anyway, they believe that's supposed to happen. When the Mahdi comes, he's like the Messiah, but he also returns with Isa, which is Jesus, because all throughout the Quran, there's more references to Mother Mary, the mother of Jesus, than any other reference. So it's odd that the Messiah of the Muslims, which is awaited, a physical Messiah coming, who's going to have between, they say in different places, 3, 6, 9, 7 years of peace. But then in the last year, he's going to elongate time, and then there's going to be the complete Muslim takeover of the world. Okay. There was a meteorite that came from the sky, hit Iran. There was supposed to be this fire from the sky that fell, and then there was supposed to be a red cloud over Iraq. Well, that was the shock and awe that happened. Iraq was supposed to have a fire and horrible damage, but the key to it has not happened yet, and that is, according to the Shiites, the destruction of Damascus. Now, we have told you before that was in Hillary's plan, because we read that implied in the Paradox of Progress, the 5-year plan of the intelligence community put out in 2017 by James Clapper in the Office of National. He was the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. They put this out, and they basically they describe a place, and they say there's going to have to be a limited nuclear war. Boom, got a bomb. That's Damascus, because once Damascus is completely destroyed, according to the Hadith and many others, that's when the Messiah can come. Now, wouldn't you want to fight for that, folks? If you were told as a Shiite that the Messiah is here and he's walking around, his name is Muhammad, and that's the reason so many people are also named Muhammad, because every Muslim might be Muhammad al-Mahdi. He might be the Messiah. Same thing that Jews believe. Every true blood lineage Jew believes that any man could be the Messiah. The Jews believe it will happen, and he will, again, just like the Muslims believe, create a reign of a big war will happen, and then he'll basically take over the whole world, and Judaism will spread throughout the whole world. Hegemony, however you want to pronounce it, world control. That's what the Mahdi brings. That's what the Jewish Messiah brings. Oh, let's not cast any aspersions. The Christians believe that on the field of Armageddon, that Christ will come a second time, his foot will touch this certain mountain, and that's it. Huge war, and then you got to read it correctly, but if you read it correctly, it's 1,000 years of peace where the Christians basically have love and peace, everything is great. And then there's the final judgment, so on and so forth. But the final judgments is connected with all of them in the same way, whether it be the Messiah of the Christians, the second return of Christ of the Christians, the Messiah of the Jews, or the Mahdi of the Muslims. It all happens right there near Damascus, between Damascus and Tel Megiddo, which is the fields of Armageddon. Now, the Catholic Church is now run by Jesuits. Francis is a Jesuit, and the whole Curia that supports him, his theological college, all Jesuits. He's now rewritten the entire doctrine of the Catholic Church, and the Jesuits took over the Knights of Malta, which was one arm of their power, and the Jesuits themselves, the head of the Jesuits was deposed, and Francis put his lieutenant there. So the Catholic Church has been taken over by the Jesuits. The Jesuits believe in what is called liberation theology, which is basically Marxism and communism, is what's going to reign after what they call apocalyptic theology. The Jesuits want to bring the Armageddon battle right now. So there are Zionists who want to bring it right now to keep chaos and to create a greater Israeli project expanding. There are Jews who want this because they want their Messiah to come, and they want basically the land that was promised to them by God through Jacob and Abraham and the whole thing. And the Christians, well, they want the return of Christ. So imagine, you have a bunch of zealots and you have a bunch of theology which says that if you force it and you make it happen now, your side wins. What's it really about? It's about politics, it's about oil, and it's about people who are using those religions, who don't even believe in those religions. The Zionists don't believe in what Moses believed in. The Christians don't believe what the Jesuits don't believe what the Christians believe. And the radical Islamic terrorists who believe that the Mahdi is going to bring complete world domination, that's not what the common Muslim believes. So what we have here are these political forces all focused in the same place that everybody says it's all going to happen, and in fact it is happening. And all around there, it's a battle, and it's practically surrounded by war on all sides, if you look at it. And it's moving into that battlefield. There are people who want to create that. The people who wanted to drop the bomb on Damascus want chaos so that they can move in Rothschild, central bank style takeovers of countries where they basically are war profiteers and they support both sides so that they can get money from both sides.
Well, that's what they always do. They always run under the cover of some unsuspecting group. And especially if it has religious connotations and symbology, because then people react in a different way.
The MRI research has shown that religious narratives create the greatest conductivity in the three parts of your brain. And they can map this, but they cannot map a God for the Muslims or the Jews because they don't have images of God. So they're very hard to control. The Christians are easy to whip into fury because they can actually send in a narrative into your brain through electromagnetic transmissions, basically radio waves, that will actually make you think a thought like Mother Mary's descending from heaven, Christ is returning, the rapture's coming, whatever. They can do that. They've done it. It's all been demonstrated. It's called the Brain Project. And it's been funded to the tune of billions of dollars, but it was actually psyops. So this is happening, but they can't control the Muslims and the Jews that way. So it's about war. So it's about Zionists using the Greater Israel Project to attack Iran, to try to pull Iran fully into a gigantic war in Syria after Damascus is destroyed. Now, does Saudi Arabia want Damascus destroyed? Not really. They don't care about that. It's the Shiite predictions, and I went and checked them all this morning. And that is true that the Shiites are waiting. They want Damascus to be destroyed. It's the last sign. The meteorite came, the Iraq was destroyed, the red sky, blah, blah, blah. All the signs are there, but destroying Damascus. That's why Damascus is the key. Because even the Sunnis, they want Damascus back. They don't really want to destroy it. They want all of Syria back because they believe it's theirs, and they believe probably made some secret deal with the Zionists that they're going to get some big part of it. They're holy sites. That's what they're after. Now remember, if the Mahdi came, they would have to decide, the Sunnis and the Shiites, whether they were going to kill each other. Because if the Mahdi says he goes with the Sunni faction, it will simply be total all-out war. If the Mahdi says, and the Mahdi is generally attributed to the Shiites at this point, because supposedly they say he's been incarnated for for decades, and that he's been walking among them, and soon he's going to appear once all the signs are done. The last sign is the destruction of Damascus. Now, what do the Christians have to do with Damascus? That's where Saul, the Jew, met a bright light that knocked him to his horse and made him deaf and blind, I believe, and they had to take him to the house of Ananias, where then Ananias and Peter trained him so he could understand what he had encountered, which was supposedly the risen Christ. So right outside of Damascus is the first place that the risen Christ appeared, who he actually transformed a Jew on the spot into a Christian, one of the, what you'd call, great Christians. So this is a key spot for all three of those, and for the Zionists, and for the Jesuits, who really aren't Christian in many respects in their political motivation, and so don't get me started. Are there other forces? Of course, the Chinese and the Russians have been brought into this. Remember when the Chinese brought their largest troop carrier right to Syria and we thought that was it, Armageddon, that's it. If they unload those troops, it's gone. And when we had idiots in America say, put troops in Syria, oh, that is so stupid. So stupid. You couldn't get any closer. Syria is the PSYOPs home. The CIA, the Mossad, the Russian, all intelligence agencies are focused on Syria. British, German, all of them, they all have money invested in Syria. They even had a nuclear power plant that was going to produce a nuclear weapon. So that's the reason it was destabilized so long ago by Israel bombing those sites. Israel wants to bomb Iran so that they can't get the weapon. But we in America gave billions of dollars in whatever denomination Iran wanted to pay them back for $400 million that they owed us, that we held in abeyance, and we paid them for the interest on that. That's what Obama did. That's why he gave them those billions of dollars on pallets. Iran was set up so that they would be a target after Syria was calming down too much. What did Trump do? He went in. He made everyone in Israel show who they are by what he's done so far. He has shown Syria for what it is, especially when he bombed there. Boy, did we find out who was really active there. He stopped funding ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria. He's burning the poppy fields in Afghanistan, and he's destroying the remnants of ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Yemen by supporting Israel and Saudi Arabia right now to attack them so we don't have to waste our time. Obama bombed them constantly. I don't know if there was a day that Obama didn't bomb somebody in 8 years, but he was in war with 7 nations, bombing them more than any president has ever bombed anyone, and no one said boo. We right now have the unfortunate circumstance that things could blow up there because Netanyahu is so corrupt, and the deals that he's making you can't trust. So what do we need to do? We need to support the immediate and complete destruction of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which, remember, those are our people, those are our mercenaries. That's the reason we can destroy them. And the radicalized Houthi and the radicalized elements in Yemen, destroy them completely. Sorry. And then Trump can stand back and say, where else is ISIS? Because I'm going to go kick their ass there too. So this is what's happening. Now, can they force an Armageddon situation politically? Yes. Yes, they can. Can they do it militarily? Oh, that's already set up, But Israel has been condemned for the Golan Heights. They've been condemned for all of their incursions into the other countries' lands around them. It doesn't stop them. It's not going to stop them. Are we behind them? Oh, Lordy. We give them so much money. It's amazing. But we're not the only ones who give them money. Remember, the British are Zionists. Good old Christian, Christian, Anglican, Lutherans, whatever, they all support Zionism because they don't support the Muslim, let's just call it what it is, theocracy.
So for the people out there who are confused and they think that Zionism is somehow tied up into being anti-Semitic, it really isn't. Zionism, you can be any religion and be a Zionist. So when we point out Zionism, we have to get beyond this category of people being Jewish. We have to look at Zionism globally and see that anybody can be a Zionist. And would you say?
Yes, because
it's not a scary word, and we need to start calling out Zionism and Zionists, whoever they are, and don't worry about the religion. Push that off to the side and look and see who is a Zionist.
Muslims, Christians, and Jews all have their home in Jerusalem. It's been peacefully controlled because there's a gun on you. Anytime you're in old Jerusalem, the Israelis literally have a gun on you. So, they're fighting to keep it peaceful because it's their home. The Muslims are fighting to keep it peaceful, but if they recognize the Jews, that stands against what their jihads have told them to do, which is these silly imams who say jihad against all Jews or against all Americans or against all Europeans or against anyone who says the name Muhammad improperly. Well, that's from the Dark Ages. Christians went through that. They were just as bad. Let's not forget that. The Jews went through that. Remember? Destroy everything, knock down every stone and every building. kill every man, woman, child, and animal, and salt the ground. Does anybody remember the Old Testament?
So, looking at your original list here, Dick Cheney and James Woodsley and Larry Summers and all these people, these Americans here, are they Zionists?
Oh, heavens, yes.
Okay, I don't mean to get you all worked up, but I want people to understand that it's about a political agenda. It's not about a religious agenda. It's just that they hide within the religion in order to trick you so you won't call it out as it is.
I am a universalist. I believe in Judaism and its traditions completely. I've practiced them, except I'm not Jewish. I believe in Muslim. I was an esoteric Sufi. I believe in Christianity. I was a priest, for heaven's sakes. I believe in all religions. I'm not bashing any religion, and I'm not bashing anything like that.
But we have to get beyond this this line that they have drawn in the sand, that it's not okay to talk about what this is.
They use that as an anti-narrative.
Yes.
So anybody that doesn't agree with them, it's called ethnocentrism. You call them fascists.
And then we have the Anti-Defamation League that's set up really to make sure that we're all held in check and balance so that we can never discuss these issues.
And there's equivalence in Christianity and in the Islamic faith. They need to defend the loving core traditions and let the conservative radicals, who then bring it into the physical world and believe that their Messiah is going to return and then have a theocracy, hegemony, and control the whole world. Well, think of that. Does anyone really want to be a part of a religion that does that? Only universalism can help us get through the desire to have war with anyone who isn't like us. It's called ethnocentrism. It is literally biological. When you look at someone that's not like you, you automatically reject them physically. That's just the way it is. When they speak and it isn't a language you understand, you go to sleep. It's called being blue-pilled. We are red-pilling you today to let you know that the real battle is a spiritual battle. If we in our hearts can wipe the concept of Armageddon, which in all cases is mistaken, the interpretation of it, I can go into that at another time, but if we can wipe away the spiritual materialism of an Armageddon that has to happen in the physical plane, we can wipe away the political narrative that drives people with religious narratives to become zealots instead of just being rational, looking at history and sitting down and talking with someone and learning their language. And that's what we're recommending. Learn the language of your enemy, and they won't be your enemy anymore.